marked up book that took about a 10-minute reading, which I think is about the right amount to read, although this may be 12 minutes, because this is not the perfectly marked up book. This is one of the late people's books that I borrowed from her. And so it's not seamless, but I'm going to read you enough so that you can tell who these people are and where we are with them. And then I really am happy to answer questions. Really about anything, but this is chapter 1, the parquet. There are so many evils that pull on our children, even in the mellow town of Lansdale, where it is easy to see only beauty and decency. A teenager died nearly every year after a party, and kids routinely went from high school to psych wards, halfway houses, or jail. Once a year, a child from the county of Orange jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge. Elizabeth Ferguson looked around at the Saturday morning comings and goings of the townspeople and saw parents who had lost or were losing their kids, kids who had lost or were losing their minds. She and James sat with their coffees and newspaper on the wide steps of the parquet, which was what everyone in town called the parking bay in the center of town, making it seem a lot more festive than it was. It was a big parking lot that abutted the boulevard that ran from San Quentin to the east, all the way out to Olima on the Pacific coast. There was a bus kiosk on the north side and two weathered sets of concrete steps, the one where Elizabeth and her husband sat reading, and another at the far end, across from the movie theater. She and James were waiting for her daughter, whom they were going to take shopping in town if she ever arrived. Rosie needed notebooks and some summer tops for her last weeks as a junior at the local high school, and shops fanned out below the parquet, stretching almost to the northern face of Mount Tamalpais, but Rosie was nowhere in sight. Elizabeth felt huge and worried. Even sitting down, she was taller than her husband, and her otherwise dark, thick hair was slightly more gray-streaked. But Rosie was taller than either, almost 5'11", black-haired, strapping, and fabulous, except when they wanted to disown her, like now. James read the paper in vexed silence, and Elizabeth sipped her coffee and watched people go about their business. A tidal feeling ebbed and flowed around them, of people on foot, shopping or going back to their cars. You never knew for sure who would be there. Someone you'd been missing, someone you were trying to avoid. Two teenage boys took their spots on the bottom steps. Their pose was a flop that said, "I've arrived and I'm not moving." Others stepped past them to get to their cars or up to the boulevard. Over by the kiosk, there was a sense of marketplace transaction among the high school kids, punk, funk, hippie, straight, of intrigue, nonchalance, commerce, boredom, opportunity. Some of the young men converging at the kiosk had cultivated the look of homelessness, but without the inconvenience and hardship. Car keys, for instance, dangled from their belts as they drank $4 lattes. Some looked like star athletes because they were or had been, but you saw a feral, dark energy in some of the young here, of despair, blankness, failure, and indirect gazes, ill health, or sometimes a dangerous, raw male potency. The grunge, the piercings, the clothes that deliberately didn't fit, that said, "I am the best, I am the worst," and the tattoos that were psychic band-aids to cover the wounds. Some of these guys had been to Elizabeth's home in the years since she and Rosie and James had moved here from Bayview. Two were friends from school, and one had briefly had benefits, which Elizabeth had learned by reading Rosie's journal. She had had to do the moth after reading the entry about Rosie and Jason Brewer. Elizabeth rationalized snooping as recon and found herself reading the journal on a regular basis. When she got new intel that she did not tell Rosie she knew, she obsessed about the dreadful news. For example, that Rosie had tried cocaine a few times last summer and smoked cigarettes every so often. And when Elizabeth did admit to snooping, for instance, when she discovered that Rosie was not a virgin, Rosie rightfully went crazy and didn't speak to her for days. When Elizabeth tried to break the habit and go without any new information, she fixated on the the grisly teenage possibilities. So it was torture in any case, as Elizabeth had to try to keep the file straight in her head, what she knew and had admitted to, what she knew but must keep a secret, and what were only